Hello everyone, yes, you're reading that title correctly. You did not enter the Twilight Zone. I technically did win my locals with Vivi. I went 3-0. I say technically because there was another 3-0 player. So we should have had another round, I believe. And let's just say I would have left 3-1 if we did. So just a lot of caveats with this. I was going to make this video on this deck list regardless of how I did for this. Bringing Vivi to locals for the first time in set 7. It was just a fun time, just goofing off. I just got back from Gen Con, wanted to have some fun. Also, another caveat, there was only like 9 people. So again, I'm not making this video to say Vivi is the best deck in format, maybe. But I am just making this video to say if you're looking for a fun deck to play, want to goof off, you know, try something different, add a little bit of spice. This is a fun thing. This is just a fun thing to check out. So I'm not saying you're going to bring this to a locals and even win. You know, I would be making this video if I was 0-3, right? But hey, if you're looking to check out something different, this is a fun deck profile. Of course, I've got my Vivi Don and my other Alabasta Don there. You can tell Alabasta is probably one of my favorite arcs from One Piece. I've got my Momo winner card that we got from our pack. Definitely going to be putting this in a deck very soon that I won't spoil, but I'll probably be making a video about on the channel. So very happy to get him as a winner card. And of course, this is first part of the deck list. You need this if you're going to win, right? At least 5 Vivi Don cards are required to win, I would say. You're still probably going to lose even if you got the Don, but hey, it's you got to keep the theme going, right? And of course, we got the sleeves to match, right? But let's get into the deck list, but first go over Vivi as a leader and kind of my thoughts, and I'll talk about my matches. Again, not saying this is anything really to brag about. I was going to be just making this deck list video anyway. So after getting all that out of the way, let's get into it. The Vivi leader, 5 health, red and blue, 5k power, cannot attack, activate mana once per turn. You can rest 2 Dawn, draw a card, and then give one of your characters rush. So we're going to be just looking to have a big hand size. So drawing an extra card every turn is just so good for that. We're going to be defending life a little bit more aggressively because of that, and trying to prolong the game to the end game, trying to get out our bigger bodies. Most of our threats are going to be 6 Dawn and up. So we want to really live until that, basically. And of course, that's why we like to go second, is because we can draw a card first and then use lead ability on our 2 Dawn turn. Even if there's nothing to give rush to, the draw is first on the lead ability. So we can draw a card even if there's nothing to give rush to, something to keep in mind. So on our 2 Dawn turn, first turn, we can go up to 7 cards where we normally would have 6. Crazy, right? Such a good leader. I don't know why it doesn't seem more meta play, right? But all jokes aside, let's get into the deck list. First, I'll talk about my matches briefly. I faced Black Yellow Luffy. Gravity Blade just does wonders in that matchup. Then we went against a Vegapunk. I know, 2 leaders that can't attack. It was honestly probably one of the most fun matches I've had in a while. Because of that, you know, not a lot of swings going on. We were both pretty healthy going into the late game, and let's just say he dropped the 9-drop Yamato and it KO'd my 10-drop Shanks, which shouldn't really happen, but it did. And then my last matchup was against Rob Lucci. So very fun night. Again, I just was bringing Vivi to have a little bit of fun and not take things too seriously. But getting into the deck list, we've got 4 Happiness Punch, one of my favorite events, and the reason that we can kind of protect our life for not a lot of cost. This is just 1 card out of our hand, and it basically gets us 3k minus in power, but we can split it amongst 2 characters. So the card is counter for 1 Dawn. You can give one of your opponent's leaders or characters minus 2k power for the turn, and then an additional character or leader minus 1000, because if your leader is active, you get that additional 1000, and Vivi can't attack, so she's always going to be active for the most part. Unless you're going against a Bonnie player that decides to rest your leader, then you wouldn't get that extra 1000. But yeah, we can split minus 2k power and minus 1 between 2 characters, a character and a leader, or just stack it onto 1 character. And again, it's for the turn. So if it's for something that For example, the 9-drop Zoro that can just swing 3 times. Hey, if you have 3 of these in hand and 3 Dawn open, that is not a lot of value from that Zoro anymore. But one of my favorite cards, again, we're 5 life and we have stuff like that, so it's a little bit easier for us to defend early on and get to our late game. A lot of times in Vivi, I'm not playing things out too early unless I've got like a Shariah or something, but just going to be using leader ability and stuff like Happiness Punch to keep ourselves alive till the late game. Next card, we've got 4 copies of Rad Beam, 1 Dawn, get 2k power for the battle, or if you're at 2 or less life, it goes up to 4k. So great defensive card for just 1 Dawn. Of course, it's got the trigger to give your leader or character plus 1000 for the turn. So if you're going against somebody that goes super wide, like a Red Purple Law or a Gecko Moria, could come into play, just boosting yourself up by 1k power for the entire turn. Next, we've got 3 0-cost events. Trash a card from your hand, go up by 3000 power for the battle. Bad Manners Kick course. We run a lot of bricks, even the events. If we don't have any Dawn open, there are bricks in hand. So honestly, probably want to bump this up to 4. I'll let you in on a secret. I couldn't find a 4th copy. I know that I probably would have this at 4 if I had another copy of it. It's around here somewhere. I'll find it. Again, I haven't really played Vivi in person locals since set 4. That's when I kind of got into the game. And yeah, so definitely would bump this up to 4. Next, we've got one of my favorite events in the game that's got me kicking my feet under the desk every time I get to play it, you know, just got me giddy, giggling to myself. Gravity Blade, Raging Tiger, our 7-drop bottom deck 2 of our opponents' 6 cost or lower characters. Again, against things like Black Yellow Luffy, Red Purple Law, anyone really. This is going to be a major threat. It doesn't feel great all the time to play as Vivi because we have a lot of our bigger bodies. So on our 7 Dawn or 8 Dawn turn, I'd much rather play a body out than have just all of my Dawn allocated to this. But it does come into play a lot, especially if they're blockering up, you know, against like Rob Lucci, if they got like 2 Sabos on the board, something like that. It's a great way to get rid of them and start swinging into life. That does it for our events. A lot of events in this deck, which do come into play in a different way with one of our characters I'll get into a little bit. But first, let's get into our 2k counters for the deck. We've got 3 copies of the Super Spot Build Duck Troops. Yes, I did have to read the name again. It's very long, okay? It's a 2k counter, 2 Dawn, 3k power. It does have an interesting effect that I will read from the card here because I'm a card player, okay? I have to reread my cards all the time. Basically, when we're swinging with this card, you can give your leader minus 5k power for the turn and then return this character to the owner's hand at the end of the turn. So yeah, basically bouncing it back to our hand after it swings. Why would you want to do that? Well, there are a lot of decks that use 1-drop searchers, like Momonosuke. Momonosuke rests himself to search. So instead of letting your opponent just get infinite searches, if we're on our 4 Dawn turn, you can play this out, give it rush and draw a card, and then swing into those searchers, kill them, stop letting them get the infinite value of, you know, repeated searching, and then it bounces back to our hand at the end of the turn so they can't kill our 2k and we can counter out with it later. Great card. I do like it at 3 copies for that reason. Didn't really come into play too much because I didn't play against anyone with repeat searchers, but next, 2k, the Sanji 2-drop. This is a great card to give rush to, either late game or early game too. His ability is activate main. Once per turn, you can give him 2 rested Dawn, and he gains 2k power in addition to that. So 7k power total. So on our 4 Dawn turn, we can play him out, give him the 2 Dawn that we used to play him, draw a card, get rush. You take the top card of your life from this card though, which is a requirement, I believe. So you take the top card of your life, you're drawing a card, getting a pretty big hand size, so maybe not the worst thing taking life so early, but rushing 7k does feel great. does feel great, especially late game when they're not expecting it. You know, you don't have to keep a ton of Dawn open for this card like you would with a Hody Jones, for example. Like if you're swinging and you keep 7 Dawn open, your opponent may anticipate the Hody Jones rush. But this, you only have to keep open 4 Dawn technically to get a 7k rush. They might not anticipate it. Next, we've got our last 2k counter, 3 copies of Otama. Probably would bump this up again. Let you in another secret. Couldn't find a 4th copy. It's around here somewhere. I'll find it. But on play, give a character minus 2k power. Great if you need to swing into something. Otherwise, just a 2k counter. Honestly, I'm not so mad about it being 3 copies because I probably would have cut one of these for the 4th copy of it. And I do like this at 3 copies just to see it if we need it early game. You know, if you're going against like a Bonnie or even a Perona now, some deck that you know runs those 1-drop repeatable searchers, you probably will want to see this early game. So 3 copies does feel pretty good, but that is our 2k counters for the deck. Next, getting into our characters, I've got 4 copies of Shariah, one of the best blockers in the game. I say that about most blockers I play, but you know, we only play good blockers around here, okay? 3 Dawn, 4k power, but when he is blocking or attacking, he matches the power of your opponent's leader. So if your opponent stacks a bunch of leader on, or a bunch of Dawn on their leader and then swings at you, you can block with Shariah, and then you just need 1k in counter to counter out regardless of how strong their leader is. And he does keep the matched power of the leader for the turn following that. So if your opponent's leader swings 5k at you, you block out counter. Shariah will be 5k for the following turn, making him a little bit harder to swing into. And again, it does help with matchups like Black Yellow Luffy, leaders that buff themselves up to higher numbers, a little bit harder to swing into. Shariah just matches that. So great body to swing out late game against matchups like that. So for Shariah. Next, we got 1 ulti. I would honestly like to play this at 2 copies, maybe even 3. I just feel like it's a decent card for Vivi, especially. On play, if your leader is multicolored, we look at the top 3, we add 1 card to hand, and then we can range the next 2 on top or bottom of our choosing. So we take a card to hand. So even if we're on our 4 Dawn turn, for example, we don't get to use our leader ability if we play this out. However, she still does replace herself, so her hand size isn't going down, which is good. And we do get a 5k body on the board. And then, because we get to know what our next 2 cards on the top of our deck are, we know what we'll be drawing next turn and getting from our leader ability next turn, which is great information to have. So that's why I would like to play that at 2 copies. I think it's pretty good for the deck. But next, we've got 2 copies of Pudding, one of the most infamous blue cards. The reason people get a little bit nervous when you sit down against them with a blue Dofi deck, for example. Pudding is just despicable, and I love playing it. On play, your opponent turns all of their cards from their hand to their deck, shuffles, and draws 5 cards. So anyone that has a big hand, no, they don't. They've got 5 now. So it's great to mess up your opponent. It's just a fun card. I like it at 2 because it still does have 1k in counter, so it's not a brick, but it's only 4k power. It is a fun card to play, but it doesn't come into play at so much. Next, we've got 4 Little Oars Jr., a 6 Dawn, 7k power body. Once per turn, if you were to be KO'd by effect, I can trash an event or stage from my hand, and he does not get KO'd. That's, again, why we play so many events. It works very well with his body, very hard to remove. If your opponent is, again, like Rob Lucci, for example, a little bit harder because they have to KO him twice, essentially, with effect to get rid of him. Similar to Marco, the 5-drop 6k power Marco, but this doesn't play him back out rested, so they can't just swing into him. For example, if it's like your 6 Dawn turn, you just play him out, they have to KO him with effect twice to get rid of him. So great body, 6k, 6 Don and 7k power, and the 7k power is pretty good. Again, on our 8 Don turn, we can play him out, give him rush, swing in for 7k. Feels pretty good. Next, we've got 4 Boa Hancock, one of the new 6 drops from set 7, 8k power. On play, one of your opponent's characters other than Monkey D. Luffy cannot attack until the end of their next turn, and then we can bottom deck a 1-cost character. Again, if they've got like a 1-drop repeat searcher out, it could be a good way to get rid of it. And the fact that there's no cost restriction for not letting one of your opponent's characters attack, it's a great way to kind of stall or defend against, again, for example, the 9-drop Zoro that can restand himself. It doesn't matter because it's not a freezing effect, it's a can't attack, similar to the beige trigger. So great way to defend our board while establishing a great big body. You know, like 8k power is a pretty good stat line to have for 6 Don, especially again on our 8 Don turn. We can play this out, freeze one of their, or stun one of their characters, can't attack. Got to differentiate that. They can't attack, and we are swinging in with an 8k body, which is pretty good. Next, we've got 4 copies of the 7-drop 8k power Borsellino on play, bottom deck, a character of cost of 4 or less. There's a lot of decks that run a lot of 4-drops, you know, like Red Purple Law, especially running around so much in the meta. Gecko Moria, even a lot of 4-drops. So great way to get rid of that while establishing, again, a pretty big body. Next, we've got our Boss Monsters. 4 copies of the 10-cost, 12k power Shanks. On play, KO one of your opponent's characters with 10,000 power or less. I feel like the reason why this deck actually kind of works in the meta right now, there aren't too many decks that run characters with 12k power stat line, 11k power stat line, you know? Maybe blue decks with the 10-drop Kaido, but any yellow deck pretty much is running the 10-drop Ace, which has that 10k power stat line. So again, this hits that. This hits Gecko Moria. This hits a lot of high-end bodies that a lot of meta decks are going to be running. Again, establishing a 10-cost, 12k power body, that's going to be pretty hard to get rid of. It is 10 Don, so we won't have any for leader ability or any of our counter events. That's why probably want to bump up the 0-cost event to 4 copies just to get rid of some bricks. You know, if we're playing out a 10-drop body, we have to make sure that we can defend ourselves the next turn for our opponent's crackback. Next, we've got our last 2 cards, 2 copies of the 10-cost Kaido. On play, if your opponent has 3 or less life, you draw 4 cards. Great way for if you were defending early, dumping out your hand to get this back. You know, again, establishing such a big body, you know, that 12k power stat line. Love to see that, but the fact that we refill our hand with 4 cards, it just works so well. We don't really need to see it too much. Like 2 copies is fine to me because we're drawing so much otherwise, and we're not getting rid of a body anyway, but great body, great effect. That is the deck list. Again, I would like to play around with some ratios. And of course, again, not saying that this deck is going to be your winning deck that's going to be winning your locals or regionals or anything like that, really, but it's just a fun deck to try out. Let me know what you think of the deck list. If you've tried Vivi out in the past or in set 7, let me know how it's gone for you. Anything you would change in the deck list, let me know. Definitely going to be playing around with some ratios, some different cards. There's a lot of different builds that kind of work with this deck because this deck just kind of works as a baseline, right? But a very fun deck to try out. Definitely something that if you're looking for an off-meta deck to play, I would say this is a fun one to try. But again, let me know what you think down in the comments. Leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.